Okay, so I want to start this video off by first off mentioning how important this is, and the information that will follow. I have been sitting on this information specifically, but much more information that I will hopefully continue to put out since at least December of last year, and even before that. But specifically this video, December of last year. There's a couple reasons I haven't put any of this information out yet, specifically on my channel. Now, I have been putting this information out through comments, okay, comment section warfare, live chat, Discord chat rooms, etc. Okay, so I have been active in spreading this information because it's actually very important information. But I haven't been active in putting it on my channel. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. First off, I don't think the timing's right. Secondly, there have been people that have covered things in much more depth than I have, similar type of things, and that have been taken out, killed over this information. I'm not interested in being taken out. But I would feel extremely guilty if I didn't at least make a video on this, because this is the end game, the long-term, long-range plan for the Trump presidency and the movement. So before I get into the documentation that proves Trump's endgame, or I should say his operators' endgame, right, the operators behind the scenes, those military folks that have always been there, I want to give an analysis, and this will be the most precise and clear analysis you will get on Jones and his operation. Now, the reason I want to start off by giving my analysis on what he and his operation is because that was the ignition for this movement, right? If you were paying attention to it the entire time, like I have been since 2015, since everybody was supporting Cruz, and then all of a sudden they all flipped and started supporting Trump, you would recognize that Infowars was the primer that launched this movement into motion. Phase two of his job, of his mission, if you will be spinning this information that follows into a good thing when it is obviously a bad thing. And the ultimate irony of this situation here is that Jones warned of this future martial law situation, right? He warned of that the entire time, and he will be the one, he will be part of it, ushering it in, making you think that it's a good thing, playing that Judas Goat role. Now, it doesn't matter how you look at Jones. There's about 3 ways you can look at what he is as a person, but you have to remember, he is a person. He breathes, he shits, he's a person, right? So you can look at him as completely deceiving everybody, just completely deceiving you, knowing he's doing it, or you can look at him as someone who's been completely duped, which is the common story with a military intelligence pawn. There's information withheld from them. The bigger picture is never explained to them. They're always directed to small little pieces that keep them distracted from seeing the bigger picture going on around them. They're too close to it, and they can't recognize that there's a grander plan. All the while, they're being fed information by specific people, by their operators, by their informants to make them think they're on the right track. But in reality, they're ushering in a central military power. Or you can look at him as a well-trained mind control slave who's sort of a combination of all of those things. Okay, but either way you look at it, he's a human. So first off, Jones's job and what he does best is keep you within the John Birch Society paradigm. Now, that is essentially what this entire Trump movement is that's what the alt-right is. It's the old John Birch Society paradigm, the old new right, which is not really new, but goes back to the 50s. Now, the John Birch Society is nothing more than a military intelligence front, a sort of conduit for these type of propaganda operations, radio operations, television operations. This is nothing new. And the main characters you're going to see in the John Birch Society are military folks. You're going to see entertainers, actors, i.e. John Wayne, your corrupt lawyer types, your financiers, like the Kochs and the Hunts. And then you're going to see your evangelical radio personality types, like your Alex Jones types. And those are the people that make up the John Birch Society, which give you all the tools necessary to run these propaganda operations. So let's take a listen to this clip real fast from earlier this week.
So, over the years, I've had a lot of Texas oil people contact me and want to try to help Infowars. And I've never done it because I want to self-fund their operation. And I have that as an ace in the hole. You know, a lot of people that I can go to if I needed a lot of money. That's why the whole Soros, Hillary plan, where they're in the news, on NBC News, saying they plan to shut me down. They admit the Democratic Party's behind it. That's why we don't want to go down that route, but we're going to win one way or another. I might just drive up to Cisco this weekend, take a few Army officers with me, and have a conversation with the billionaires that are financing you. Maybe show them some files, Shapiro. Want that? Think you do. I think I'll do it. I think I'll get in your business. You know what happens when I get in people's businesses, boy? They ain't in business long, son. You like what I did to your daddy, Beck? He really did it to himself, didn't he? But we told everybody what he was.
Now, I think that comment about going up to Cisco with a couple Army officers was truly a slip-up. I think if he went back, he wouldn't say that. But that's an important clip. With Ben Shapiro attacking him, he gets sort of self-conscious and starts talking about how he's got these Army connections and how he can take a couple Army officers up to Cisco, which I believe is accurate. Now, why is that accurate? Because Infowars is a military intelligence operation. It is a great propaganda operation. It's the new Voice of America information warfare operation. It's a more sophisticated version of the Voice of America.
Folks ask why I went with old Voice of America transmitters that got bought out by private groups when the U.S. stopped transmitting at hundreds of thousands of watts of shortwave into Europe and Africa and everywhere. They said, there's no money in that. Why are you going to pay $10,000 a month to be on 4 or 5 different transmitters, 10 hours a day, blasting all over the world? You know, we've got a lot of folks work here at the office that were in the military, and some of them were, you know, involved in not just your standard special operations stuff, but some of the most elite groups out there. And my parents had friends that were in the John Birch Society, guys that worked at the telephone company, FBI agents, cops, lawyers that would come by the house. They basically have John Birch meetings.
Now, we see a common history of the John Birch Society funding radio propaganda movements, because like I said, it's a conduit. You also have these offshoots of the John Birch Society, these councils, the Council for Inter-American Securities, and things like the Council for National Policy set up by the Hunt oil family. Now, like I mentioned, you have these financiers within these societies and councils, and their job is to dump the money in. Now, you heard Jones mention in that previous clip that he receives money, or he's been offered money by these wealthy oil families. He claims he hasn't taken any money, but that's simply not true. He's definitely taken money, whether it be through his donations or otherwise. He has definitely taken money. All you have to do is take a look at his operation.
Not in the market for one of our terrific products. Go to the site now and make a generous donation. $25, $50, $100, $250, even $500. Yes, some Infowars warriors have sent us $1,000 or more.
Now, the NRA got flooded with a lot of money. And that's good. When they tried to shut them down and everything. We need to be flooded with support.
Now, he mentioned going up to Cisco, and the reason why he said Cisco was because he was talking about Ben Shapiro's financiers, who are the Wilkes family, which are another oil fracking tycoon, fairly new money, but they're the John Birch Society type people, okay? Now, the Hunt oil family, which I'm sure gets their money to Jones somehow, has a history of funding these radio shows going back to the 50s. In the 1950s, Texas oil man Hunt created fact forms and answers for America, which were shown on over 200 TV and radio stations. Facts featured Dan Smoot giving two opposing perspectives on contemporary issues. Answers was a panel program with 3 liberals and 3 conservatives. Hunt underwrote the shows for $1 million a year, his weekly salary. Now, that was back in the 50s. Think about that. The programs aired as free public service, and educational, not-for-profit fact forms was untaxed. Hunt presented a balanced political debate, but the liberal perspective typically came across as foolish. Right? We see that now. There are, believe it or not, there are some legitimate talking points on the left, but you will never see those break through the John Birch Society paradigm. It's simply not allowed. That's Jones's job. It's not allowed for you to understand about things like Bayrock and anything negative, anything outside of the John Birch Society, anything that shatters that paradigm is not allowed. Now, I'd like to get into all of that stuff in much more depth, and you certainly can because there's so many parallels, it's unbelievable. But I want to move on to the tactics that Jones uses to keep you within this John Birch Society paradigm. His main 2 tactics, information warfare, an army idea, an idea coming out of a lieutenant colonel in the army, and political warfare. Now, he's operating in peacetime political warfare. Gray propaganda. The major way political warfare is waged is through propaganda. The essence of these operations can either be covert or overt. Now, there's white propaganda where you know exactly where it's coming from, and there's gray propaganda where it's a semi-official application of a government voice, i.e. Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Voice of America, etc. Those were Cold War-style gray propaganda operations waging political warfare, which is certainly what we see going on right now. The most basic channel is the spoken word. This can include live speeches or radio/television broadcasts. Overt or covert radio broadcasting can be an especially useful tool. The printed word is also very powerful, including pamphlets, leaflets, books, magazines, political cartoons, etc. Subversion, agents of influence, spies, journalists, and useful idiots can all be powerful tools in political warfare. We certainly see magazines, leaflets, booklets, political cartoons promoted, Ben Garrison, magazines coming out of the John Birch Society, etc. Now, I want to move on to these clips. Now we're moving on into these executive orders that Trump has signed, which document what the long-range plan of this presidency really is. So let me start by playing this clip from February 22nd, 2018, which I believe they chose that date specifically because it's George Washington's birthday, but it's also my birthday. And I think they really think that, Jerome Corsi, photoed here with Nelson Rockefeller. Now, I've talked about Nelson Rockefeller. He's one of these main guys, one of these main financiers in the CNP and JBS. Jerome Corsi is a Council for National Policy member. Now, I think these guys truly, people like these Jerome Corsi characters, I think they truly believe that they're waging a second American Revolution. But in reality, what they're doing is lining up for a central military control under martial law, at least for the time being, and ushering in a brave new world. And by the way, Elon Musk is your Ford.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that I'm emphasizing and kind of trying to bring public the degree to which the military has been increasingly involved, not only in advising but protecting President Trump. The people are going to realize with this executive order that Donald Trump signed on December 21st, we are in a state of emergency. It's been declared. Now, it has not been made a big deal of. It was buried inside the executive order. You had to read it, where it came across and said, "For these reasons, I hereby declare we are in a state of national emergency." That gives the president exceptional powers. It enables the president to begin activating the military, to begin taking exceptional powers, even convening military tribunals, having martial law declared if necessary, quietly.
And let's come back from breaking it into this, because this is such a big topic and it ties into COG and the plans to assassinate the president and all of it. This is not, people go, Alex, this is what you warned of. No. If the globalists might use this against us, we're now in a fight for the very country. We are in an emergency. This is what the president should be doing. We are in an emergency with these foreign globalists running rampant, engaged in crimes at every level. We have them. We are in an emergency. This is exactly what the president should be doing. Correct, Doctor?
Absolutely, 100%. And ultimately, Donald Trump knows that the end game here is that the charges that are going to be brought ultimately against Hillary and Barack Obama involve sedition and treason. And these are, Donald Trump has no intent of letting go of this until those two are brought to justice.
And he's confident and competent, because everything his dad taught him, everything he learned has now been echoed by the patriots and the government and the people, and he knows he's with us, lined up. As long as we stick with Trump, we're going over the top. We're going to crush the enemy. We'll be right back. Thank you, Alex Newman. More with Dr. Corsi straight ahead. Trump, and has been since he took the mission.
Well, and I want to explore one other part of this, and that is that since Trump signed that executive order, there's military intelligence has superiority over all the other forms of intelligence. It is the preeminent form of intelligence. There's a Supreme Court decision, Reynolds v. U.S. in the 50s, that established military intelligence has ascendancy and superiority, ability to rule the game over all the alphabet intelligence agencies, CIA, and all the rest of them. Now, since Trump signed that executive order, military intelligence is a group of military intelligence that works 100% of the time with NSA. So they're familiar with all of the domestic intelligence, and the military have determined that the end game here is going to involve military tribunals. You can't try Hillary or Obama or any of the top people in a civil court and make it available to a wider range of the American people who are not used to dealing with intelligence information. It needs to be decoded. It needs to be interpreted.
That's our mission, is take this complex info to the people to then mobilize them.
YouTube channel. What we're doing is we're trying to get the American people to understand that we are in a state of emergency. It's been declared by the president. The U.S. military is taking a larger exceptional role. I mean,
it's not arrogant. It's called survival, and I need you to get more.
So did you hear that? We've literally been in a state of emergency since December of last year. Now, I and others have pegged Donald Trump as a military intelligence operation before Jerome Corsi went out in public about it. Since then, he has been publicly talking about it. So has Jones. But before then, there was only one little clip of Jones. One time he mentioned it. Now, I don't want to leave the QAnon factor out. I wasn't originally following that. I immediately pegged that as a Pentagon operation, which Jones later basically admitted that it was. And it's a psyop, as you said, to keep people believing and to push people in specific directions. But I think it's a Pentagon operation, just like
Amazon first. QAnon.
Amazon?
I know you know QAnon's identity, but
yes,
obviously we're not going to. And I've confirmed as well. QAnon is a group in the Pentagon,
and very close to Donald.
But I do know that he was they were basically saying that this kind of stuff. But their spin is that it's all for the military tribunals, right? It's all for the greater good. No, absolutely not. This is for the U.S. Army to retain the power that it's lost. They want to get rid of the compartmentalization. They want to get rid of things like the DNI, etc., and retain the power that they had at the end of World War II. They want central control. They want to control it all. And we're on the fast track to seeing that. A brave new world. Now, people need to also recognize that this could be enacted from international conflict or domestic conflict. So it could happen. Something could happen domestically that would trigger him to enact this martial law, or something internationally. So what we see going on with Iran right now could literally trigger martial law in this country. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, if you thought that one was bad, just wait until we get into these new ones that he just signed this month of this year. Now, again, you're going to see this spun as a good thing by the Trump gray propaganda arms, the DOD gray propaganda out there. You're going to see them all agree that, oh, yes, this is good. If they don't think it's good, they'll spin it as Trump's trying his best, but it's the deep state directing him in the wrong direction. Some stupid shit like that. Okay, so let me get into these new executive orders, which are just lovely, absolutely lovely. So according to a report from the Federal Services for Military Technical Cooperation, the National Security Council is a principal forum used by the President of the United States for consideration of the national security and foreign policy matters, but for whose power is directly threatened this past week when it is revealed that the, quote, deep state has created its own National Security Council. These coup plotters have named National Security Action that is being led by Ben Rhodes, who was a former deputy national security advisor for President Obama. Okay, so here's the spin. It's the old WWE, DOD, DOJ, WWE match. Well, it's actually more like a UFC match if you really want to get technical with it, because both sides are filled with real fighters. But your Dana White at the top, right? Your high level Dana White, the owner, owns both sides and is really operating, and he wins either way, which is exactly what we see going on with this DOD, DOJ fight and these future military tribunals, if you will, which is almost very reminiscent of the Army McCarthy era, and whose contempt for a free press has voiced by stating his disgust for the entire U.S. media establishment by stating, most of the outlets are reporting on world events from Washington. The average reporter we talk to is 27, and their only reporting experience consists of being around political campaigns. That's a sea of change. They literally know nothing. His brother, David Rhodes, being the president of CBS News, this report continues, Ben Rhodes is protected by the, quote, deep state media propaganda sycophants who are failing to tell the American people that these coup plotters are attempting to establish their own British-style shadow cabinet to usurp President Trump's power, in which it is warned Rhodes has herded the entire slew of top Obama national security officials. So due to this, quote, deep state plot, right, perfect excuse, perfect show, perfect theater act to usher in this brave new world, this central military control. Isn't it funny? They got all the conspiracy theory guys, all the anti-New World Order guys to usher it in. How great is that? So President Trump had at his disposal the use of a new U.S. law called the Military Justice Act of 2016, which authorized the most significant changes to the Uniform Code of the Military Justice since the Military Justice Act of '83. That President Obama never enacted into law, nor did President Trump, who missed his December 23rd, 2017 deadline for signing these new laws into enactment. Now remember, when Obama signed that and it was a big deal, and Obama was going to usher in the martial law. No, sir. Trump has always been the pawn for this agenda. So once the deep state began their creation of an actual quote-unquote shadow government by creating their own National Security Council, the report continues, President Trump on March 1st, 2018, signed a sweeping executive order fully enacting the Military Justice Act of 2016 and focuses entirely on massive changes to the Manual for Courts Martial United States. When the United States having been at war 93% out of the 93% of its existence, 224 out of the 242 years of its existence since its founding in 1776, this report notes that the masses of American people today, unlike their ancestors, have no idea that nearly every one of them fall under the criminal provisions for the Manual for Courts Martial United States. And that begins with their selective service laws allowing civilians to be taken from their homes and forced into uniform, whether willing or not, and that the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled makes these civilian subjects to court-martial from the time they are supposed to report for induction, even if they never arrive. Equally unknown to the masses of the American people, this report says it is nearly every single citizen between the ages of 17 and 44 years likewise fall under the criminal provisions for the Manual for Courts Martial United States under U.S. Code 10-311. They all constitute both the organized and unorganized militia, thus making them all, in essence, members of the U.S. military, whether they know it or not. Okay? You're all gonna fight this war. To making every American citizen, regardless of age, subject to the criminal provisions of the Manual for Courts Martial United States, it's critical to note is a power vested in only Donald Trump, who in time of war, as the commander-in-chief, has the sole authority to determine what constitutes as a threat and what should be done about it. With the Supreme Court having also ruled that war is defined by the aggression of U.S. military forces in foreign countries and not necessarily declared by the Congress, and whose standard is met by the U.S. military having nearly 800 military bases in more than 70 countries around the world. As to how President Trump will wield his unlimited powers against these, quote, deep state coup plotters, the report continues. His just signed sweeping executive orders, with the main emphasis being on authorizing the use of civilian employees experienced in the prosecution or defense of complex criminal cases to provide assistance to and consult with less experienced judge advocates throughout the entire Manual for Court-Martial United States process, thereby allowing U.S. military services to outsource a core competency of judge advocate communities, and whose only explanation for being needed would be the sudden and rapid rise in dissident American citizens entering into the court-martial process in the thousands, if not tens of thousands. With Abraham Lincoln being the last American war leader to arrest and put under U.S. military control for court-martial tens of thousands of civilian dissidents, the report continues, Trump's joking at dinner last night that China's, quote, President for Life plan is a great idea that could only happen in the U.S. someday. Dictator Trump, folks. When viewed in the light of his sweeping executive orders, should be understood with containing as much steel as it does mirth, especially with being known that he plans to enact these new laws January 1st, 2019, which is the date that a new U.S. Congress will be sworn in, and whom might contain the majority of the deep state coup plotting enemies, sworn to, quote, throw him out of office. Now, I think it's an interesting side note that Abraham Lincoln also got funding from the Russians during that time period. So essentially what we have going on here is Trump becoming a dictator. We see him signing in these executive orders that give him dictator status. Really, he's not in control. It's the military. It's always been the military, and the military will be calling the shots. So it's important to understand that we are literally on the brink of martial law, and nobody's talking about it. We're literally on the brink of complete military control. These military tribunals that the citizens are going to be wrapped up in. So to cap this video off, basically what these executive orders are saying is that in this state of emergency, when Trump enacts this state of emergency, when he puts everything into place and we're in martial law, it allows him to take over everything and dictate everything from a central military power. It allows him to take over the media. It allows him to do all kinds of things. It allows him to essentially own every citizen and do whatever he wants with it, whether that be put him in forced labor brigades, etc. So please look out for this and spread this information, because we're at such a crucial time period in history where we're seeing all these things unfold right in front of us, and not very many of us are doing anything about it. Now, I don't know if there's others out there talking about this. I hope there is. Usually that's what happens. I'm unaware of them at this moment, but make your own videos. Spread this information. Dig into this stuff, guys. It's real. It's happening.
It's to slant it just a little bit to keep you over in this paradigm shift. Mainly it's the left-right paradigm, where we get people fighting each other. Now, there's always going to be hardcore commies.
That's exactly what all our sources from the FBI and the Pentagon, which means the CIA connected Pentagon, that's special operations, that's what they told us. And these are the good guys that continue to give us good info. It doesn't mean the whole thing's good. There's a civil war in America right now. One group wanted to totally sell us out the communist Chinese. That's coming up in the next segment. The other group isn't out to rape America completely. So you're kind of stuck between that. But going on a rant here, the point is that I'm glad that McBreen remembered this, because this is the truth. Trump is not in a secret society. He was so real, him and his dad played possum for decades while they were planning all this and waiting for the right time. And guess what had happened? Again, his dad, I've confirmed from the highest levels, massive amounts of money to the John Birch Society in the 50s and 60s. Same thing with people like Donald Trump. And I've talked to the old guys that have been in the meetings just 2 days ago with Trump, 25 years ago, saying, I wish somebody'd run to stop this. I'd get behind him. He didn't even want to. When he says that, he doesn't need to do that to feel powerful. He was looking for somebody to back. They never showed up. Just like he says in speeches, they never came along. I've talked to people that were in the meetings 25 years ago when Trump was saying, who do we get to do this? So there's a real war going on in the elite right now. Don't think Trump just did this on his own. He was recruited by patriots and U.S. intelligence agencies, for a fact. Trump was recruited by the U.S. Army. That's a big secret, but you deserve to know what the Democrats already know. You deserve to understand what's really going on. We were being held underwater.
But they're not doing anything with the power that we know of. What they do have is tremendous wealth, like off the charts tremendous wealth at Apple, at Google. I mean, they just have tremendous amount of influence. And I think when you have that kind of money, like idealistic hippie left-wing dreamers are way better off like throwing that money around than like really gangster globalists that are, you know, pro-war, really enthusiastic about right-wing politics. Like that would be way scarier. If all that money, the billions of dollars, was in a Christianic cult that thought that the second coming was going to happen in Jerusalem, so it was very important to protect Israel, which is real.
I'm sure, I know Trump's already doing this, but when they're organizing violence and moving moving, and I can see they're moving with it behind the scenes. It's time for covert action, and it just has to happen. So if people kind of see Infowars as a bellwether where the people sit, I'm just saying I think the president and the military has to do what it has to do at this point. I mean, it would be negligent to sit here at this point